Hey guys, I'm Aaron Hazuri, and I am drawing a Ninja Turtle. I draw lots of Ninja Turtles, so today I'm drawing Raphael, and I thought I would take you guys through the process of how I draw. I'm going to start with a blank white space. I'm working digitally, but you could do this on paper too. And the way I start drawings is I almost always start with the head. And I draw those guidelines just to give me some indication of which direction the head's looking in. And then I'm going to start drawing the pose by doing the shoulders and some suggestion of the chest and the torso and the backbone and the pelvis. And then since I'm digitally, I can move stuff around, which is nice. If you're on paper, it's a little tougher, but still. I just start roughing in the forms, and I use sticks for this part. Raph's going to be standing kind of with his hand on his hip and giving a thumbs up. So I'm going to rough in all the different parts just using sticks and weird little shapes just so I know what goes where. And that's it. He's roughed out. So now I'm happy with the pose, and I can start building some of the forms here. I don't want to forget his shell, so I'm just going to lightly rough that in behind him. But to build the forms, I'm going to start I use mostly ovals, circles to build the forms on something like this because turtles are very kind of chunky, so they're based on oval shapes. At least the way I draw them, the cartoony ones. So I'm just going to start roughing in the forms, building them by using a bunch of spherical and oval forms. And you're going to see later on that I'm going to fine-tune some of the shapes and sizes because it's never perfect this first time around. But that's what the rough is for. And that's the best part about working digitally, is I don't have to worry about erasing any of this stuff. Or, messing up the paper when I do erase it. Because I definitely use the eraser because I don't like how big that form was. But you can see I'm going to start to add suggestions of some of the details, like the belt and the shell and all that stuff. I'm not worried about it being perfect yet. This is just to give me some idea of the placement and of the overall forms. Anatomy is not a big deal, especially when you're drawing something cartoony like this. And I know life drawing is a big deal when you're an animator, when you're an artist, when you're an illustrator. You have to worry about that kind of stuff. But for drawing cartoony Ninja Turtles for fun especially, you don't have to worry too much about everything being perfect. So I'm roughing in the feet now. See, I've roughed in the legs and just kind of put suggestions of where different parts go. I like that. I think it looks pretty good. I'm going to rough in a couple of other parts, elbow pads, knee pads, wristbands. I'm drawing this real time. I thought about maybe speeding it up, but my roughs are kind of quick, and so it's all real time. So after I've got the forms roughed in a little more, I'm going to zoom in a little bit and rough the face in. My face roughs on Ninja Turtles are pretty, they're almost what the tight drawing looks like, because I've been drawing turtles a long time, since I was like 12. So the face roughs are pretty close to what the final drawing is going to look like. I'll do another video later about how to do just the faces, because there's some structural stuff in there that if you practice, they're really easy to do. I'm going to rough his eyes in. I'm really focusing on placement of the eyes because that's a big deal. For me, the eyes, the face are the most important part. If I mess up the rest of the drawing, if I get the eyes and the face right, then it's okay. But if you mess up the eyes and the face, for me, the whole drawing is kind of lost. So I'm spending a little more time on this part of it to make sure it's where I want it to be. I'm going to rough his mask in. Rough in some wrinkles, rough in the back of the bandana. And I think the rough is looking pretty good. I'm going to just kind of clean up the nose a little bit. I'm going to suggest where the teeth go, even though later on I'm going to make those a little bit nicer than just a bunch of lines. Kind of looking them over, seeing where else I can add some details before I start really tightening up this drawing. And you can see it's getting a little messy. I am not naturally gifted. I have to really work to get a good drawing. So sometimes I work my roughs to death. And it's not necessarily a good thing, but for me to get proportions and stuff like that right, sometimes I have to kind of draw over things. So once I finish roughing out where the hand's going to go, he's going to be doing a thumbs up. I'm going to clean up the face a little bit more, and then we're going to start tightening up this drawing. The rough part is both the hard part and the easy part. It's the hard part because you really are trying to get things right, but it's easy because it goes fast and you don't have to worry too much about finesse or about things looking perfect. His hand I'm going to have kind of gripping his belt. I wanted it on his hip, but I like it better kind of tucked into his belt like that. We'll just pretend his weapons are tucked behind him, I guess. Somewhere back there. So I'm going to rough in the knee pads, and we'll talk about the wrinkles and stuff in a minute. But I'm going to rough the knee pads in so that I know where they go. And there. I think it's a pretty good pose. He looks pretty solid to me. And you can do stuff like flip him over and see how he looks when he's flipped horizontally, but I'm not going to worry about all that stuff. I think he looks good, so we're going to start cleaning him up. And I'm going to start with the face. And the way I do my cleanups is I draw with one hand and I have my other hand on Control Z or Command Z or whatever it is, because I know that I'm going to screw up some of these lines, so I want to be able to undo it quickly. The wrinkles really help to show depth. So you can see how I'm drawing through things, and I'm drawing through where his eyebrows are going to go, because I want to make sure I keep that solid shape and form of the mask. And those wrinkles go up a little bit to help show the depth and the kind of chunkiness of the mask. Cartoony turtles are kind of chunky, and everything on them is chunky. So the mask has a little bit of thickness to it, and you can see that by the wrinkles and how that wrinkle is kind of on top of the bottom part of the mask kind of goes on top of the other part of the mask. The eyebrows too go over the form of the mask that we drew, and then the eyes kind of sit inside, but you can see the different directions I do the middle part of the eyebrow so that we can see one eyebrow is a little closer to us than the other one. His head's kind of turned at an angle. So once I get the eyes in there and that little highlight, they look pretty good to me. So I'm going to do the nose, and like I said earlier, this is the most important part of the whole thing for me. If this part doesn't look right, the face, then the drawing is no good. But this one looks pretty good. So I'm carefully just drawing in, and again, this is all real time. I'm carefully drawing in his face, his mouth, his beak. Is it a beak? He's a turtle. I guess it's a beak. His nose. Keeping the idea that I want to show depth. So that nose comes in front. And then up here, I think I'm going to have the mask come down like that. I mean, you could do it either way. This one isn't a huge deal, but that mask, the way it's sitting on his head, that shows a little bit more depth. And then the chin down there, and then the mouth. We're going to add that lip. And then, let me fix that. There we go. And then the teeth, I'm going to make a little more substantial than just those little lines that we drew. So I'm going to come in and just add some curved lines for the teeth to give it a little more depth. And you can see how that curve changes as the teeth move around the head. There, he looks pretty good to me. You can see I made the eyebrows a little thick over the top of the eyes. I think I stole that from Ken Mitroni, one of my favorite artists. The bandana back there overlaps to add to some depth. And, all right, the neck I didn't rough in because you just kind of know where it goes. The shell, I didn't rough in that part either, but again, you know where it goes. The shoulders I'm going to beef up a little bit because I think he's a muscle-bound dude. So I'm beefing the shoulders up. I don't care as much if the anatomy is perfect, like I said earlier. He just needs to look good. And these cartoony turtles have kind of a chunky look. So they are based on human anatomy. And that part of the arm goes into the chest, which is under the shell. So I'm roughing in the elbow so that I know that the elbow pad follows the form of his arm. I don't want the elbow pad to look weird, to look too small, or to look like it's just kind of floating there. I want it to follow the form of his arm. So I'm drawing through it lightly. And then I'm going to draw the elbow pad just right on top of where I just drew through it. And even if this was on paper, I would draw through it, and I would just erase it afterwards. The wrinkles overlap, and that's important to show that depth. You want to make sure they're overlapping the right way. If they weren't overlapping like that, then it might look backwards or weird. And a little more muscle detail on the arm, and then let's go in and add this hand. Now right here with the hand, I've run into a problem. I'm not looking at the whole figure while I'm drawing the hand. I'm only looking at the hand. And so what's going to happen is I'm going to draw something that looks great, but then when I pull back out, that hand is not going to be the right size. So I'm drawing the wristband again with those wrinkles overlapping to show depth and to make sure you draw through. You can erase that little part, but you want to draw through so that when you do draw the wristbands and stuff, that it shows that form. Now when I pull back and look at the head, this hand is way too big, so I'm going to erase it. I'm going to rough it in again, but I'm still not happy with it. This is too small. So I'm going to pull way back so I can see what the heck I'm drawing. There we go. The hand's too small, so I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. This is one of those problems when you're working digitally is you can't always see the whole drawing. So you may end up, I'm going to rough that hand in so that it looks okay. You may end up with a drawing that's not, that the proportions are off because you're too close to it. So you got to make sure to pull back every now and then and look at the whole thing so that your proportions are right. Now here for the little name badge, I'm going to make sure to show some depth in it. That's not perfect, but it's all right. We're just kind of going over how I draw, and this is how I draw. I would clean this up a lot more if I was going to ink it. There we go. And the other half of the belt is around that form that's underneath it. I didn't draw through it because I've already got it drawn underneath there. And notice how the wrinkles overlap. That top wrinkle comes down because we're kind of looking down on his belt a little bit. We have a little bit of an overhead view of his belt. And there's the letter. And then the little ends of his belt that come through, I guess it's tied behind the behind his initial. Those come down. Some more wrinkles. And let's go in and do this shell really quickly. The shell's really round. Some artists like Ken Mitrone and like Steve Levine will draw like a border around the shell. Ken called it like a pie plate kind of thing, which looks cool. I don't usually do it. I might start, but I usually just draw the plates of the shell, the plastron. Let's draw that arm in there. Again, we're overlapping the forms and we're really simplifying the anatomy because they're cartoons, they're not real. I'm drawing through, again, I know that I'm not going to have that elbow just out like that. I'm going to put the knee pad or the elbow pad over it, but I want to draw through it first to make sure that it goes around that form the right way. There we go, right around that forearm. There we are. Let me erase that a little bit. Okay. And now let's go in and draw the wrist and then the hand. And you could do a whole video or a series of video on drawing hands, but the gist of it is you have to practice. You just got to practice drawing hands. Turtle hands are not really that different from regular hands. They're just hands. And so I'm going to draw the hand in there. I'm going to draw around the form to do his wristband. Maybe I will do a video about hands and faces. So there's his arm, and I'm looking at it now and I have the same problem I have with the hand. The arm is too big. In fact, I'm afraid that I have not been pulling back enough. And it looks like the whole upper half of his body is too big now that I've tightened it up. So I'm going to fix this because it's digital. We're going to make it a little smaller, and then I'm going to, even that forearm and hand is still a little too big, so I'm going to make that a little smaller too. These are easy mistakes to make, and digitally they're easy mistakes to fix. But if this was on paper, we would have all this in pencil anyway, so you could erase if you needed to. My penciling tends to be really heavy, so I like to work digitally for this part because, again, the erasing doesn't mess up the paper. So the legs, same thing with the anatomy. I'm not worried about them looking perfect. They need to look right enough, but they don't have to have realistic or detailed anatomy because he's a Ninja Turtle and he's a cartoon. He's not you're not going to see every vein and every muscle fiber. There's the feet, the toes go in there. You see how I'm overlapping part of it just to give the idea that something is in front of something else. It all goes into adding that depth. Same thing with this leg. This leg is back a little bit, so it's a little higher and just a little bit smaller. But it's the same idea. We want to make sure that parts of it overlap other parts to help show depth. And there's those knee pads. Cleaning those up a little bit. Let's turn off the layer. There we go. Beautiful. I think he looks really good. I'm happy with that. There's a couple of little details I could add in there, but I think he looks good. So thanks for watching. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. If you want to see me draw something else or go into more detail about something, let me know. I am an art teacher in addition to being an artist, so when I teach it's a little different than this. We go into a lot more detail about smaller aspects of the drawing or more fundamental parts of it. Just wanted to kind of show you guys how I draw from start to finish. I appreciate you watching.